think it's interesting having met a lot of international students, people that come here to either work or study, like many of my wonderful podcast crew. Having to navigate I study here in the Netherlands and it's hard to find a job, and then I'm going to lose my visa. Mm-hmm. I don't want to bring up anything here.
Guys, the way my heart just like. Hi and welcome back to my mom's favorite podcast, Poppin' Bubbles. My name is Lisa, I'm one of your hosts.
And my name is Stefan, and I'm the other host. And today we're joined by two great people from the organization called State of Youth, Janne and Liv. Could you shortly introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here. My name is Janne and I'm the program coordinator for State of Youth, the Netherlands.
And also nice to meet you and be here today. I'm Liv and I'm the program officer of State of Youth, the Netherlands. So I support Janne in the program.
Welcome. It's so nice to have you here. Also, just for those who are watching, if you're wondering what this gorgeous background is, we are in the Amsterdam office of State of Youth, which looks like a castle, which is crazy. But State of Youth, if in 2 sentences you could tell us what it is, because as we're walking into it, we have no idea. So if you could quickly introduce it as well for us.
So we are all about empowering change making because we really believe that children and young people can change the world. They have so many great ideas and so many great projects. So we see this all over the world, that there's young people who see something in their own environment or in their own city that they want to change. And they just need a little bit of support and a little bit of help. And that's what we are here for. So we are here to facilitate that change making. So we do that globally, worldwide, and also in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands specifically, we also have a research-focused program within State of Youth in the Netherlands. So we also want to strengthen the voice of young people here. So we do research where we collect the voices of youth and make sure that we are really heard and taken seriously. That's the shortest way I could describe it, I think.
And I saw that State of Youth is part of Kids' Rights. Is that how it works? And Kids' Rights is then the overarching organization of State of Youth?
Yeah, so Kids' Rights is an international children's rights organization, also about empowering change makers, specifically for children. So every year we publish the Kids' Rights Index, where we monitor and we research how countries all over the world are actually doing on children's rights. So is it going better? Is it going a bit worse? How are they doing? The only exception is the US, because unfortunately they didn't ratify the UN Children's Rights Convention. So that's quite unfortunate. Also quite typical, I would say.
Yeah.
And we also every year present one wonderful child from somewhere in the world who's doing really incredible, amazing work with the International Children's Peace Prize. So this prize is basically a recognition of their amazing work and a way to give them a platform and to show the world how amazing children can, be and what they can do. And there's a project fund attached to it to further amplify their project and what they're doing. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and besides also the research in the Netherlands, how we like to empower youth is also to empower them in their actions. So we also support youth initiatives, who we call chapters. This is also within our international program. We also support chapters, but in the Netherlands we have started that now for I think 6 months. So that's also a part that we are piloting now, which is really exciting.
Oh my God. That's crazy. I'm so excited to learn more about what you do.
Does this podcast classify as a youth project?
Could be, yeah.
We talked quickly about this, huh?
We had a little chat about it.
We'll talk about this after the episode.
Maybe we're still sitting under the rose. So it's going to stay in this room. But let's circle back a bit from State of Youth, Kids' Rights. Let's talk about you, how you ended up here. Maybe we can start with Liv.
Yeah, of course.
How did you end up here?
I think so. State of Youth is also based on the Sustainable Development Goals and the children's rights, of course. And I got involved with the Sustainable Development Goals when I was 16. during my geography classes in high school. But then also my mom invited me for a sort of focus group to think about the Sustainable Development Goals, because at the time I was 13 and then they were made and they had to be achieved in 2030 when I would be 30. And then we had a brainstorm to think about sort of what can we do. And then I made up this festival idea, and I was emailing clubs in Amsterdam while I was 13 to sort of collaborate with me on this. They never responded.
She was a change maker already.
Yeah, 13. But they never responded to me. And then I collaborated with the festival. We Are the Future Festival, it was called. And then we collected money with like a sort of fundraising event. So that's how I sort of got involved within Sustainable Development Goals or change making sort of. I wasn't a change maker with State of Youth, but just like on my own terms.
Change maker by yourself.
So what was this event? What was this event that you wanted to organize?
It was just a really big party for the youth, and then we also wanted to sort of get a funding call or like a donation call with it. So then artists donated items, for example, a chair. A DJ donated a chair on which he made music, or like these kind of sort of objects, and then those were auctioned, and then we collected the money.
You did this when you were 13?
No, then I was 16, so it took 3 years to really sort of.
But you were working on it for 3 years. That's some serious dedication.
I think so. I was working on for like 1 year when I was 13. Then there was a gap, and then 1 year again when I was 16. So yeah, so that's when I sort of dove into the topic, and then my studies followed, and it all led me towards sort of working in children's rights, human rights, and then I ended up with State of Youth, which I'm really happy about, 10 months ago. So yeah, so that's how I sort of my path towards working here was.
I remember this story from when we first received your CV and we had our first conversation, our first interview, you know, being so impressed immediately, and now it's still really cool to hear. Yeah.
Again, yeah.
Full circle moment.
Yeah, exactly.
How about you, Janne?
I would say for me it started maybe around 17-ish. I remember I was in high school, and we had to write like a high school thesis, like a graduation project. And I was literally just Googling subjects for high school thesis, whatever. And I came across this topic of statelessness. And it really opened my eyes. Like, as a 17-year-old, I was like, how have I never heard of this? How do I not know anything about this? So basically people who do not have a nationality or not an effective nationality, so there's no state that effectively recognizes them. And basically that means that like you do not have effective access to all of your human rights. All of those human rights are so attached to basically citizenship. So that really opened my eyes, and it led me to volunteer with Amnesty. Then it led me to do an internship at a children's rights organization, and then also at a law firm, and that kind of led me into this whole human rights activism field.
How many people are stateless? Do you know?
No, unfortunately no, but way too many.
Way too many?
Yeah.
Is that like the movie, what's it called? Is it The Departed? The one with no, not The Departed.
There's one.
It's like that movie with the guy in the airport.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I too young?
That is true. Yeah, I've seen that one.
That's statelessness.
Yeah, I feel like it's especially in the past years with all the like conflicts going on and like wars. I feel like it's just getting worse and worse. Like I know, just at least from like my experience. I come from a background so I'm from Belarus, and we had like a very complicated political situation for like quite a few years now, and I know quite a few people who left the country because they just couldn't stay there anymore, but because their documents are going to expire soon, that's kind of the topic where they're like, okay, my passport expires in 2 years. In 1 year, you cannot apply for any sort of citizenship. And they are now like refugees in some countries in Europe because just like they are going to be prosecuted back at home. And so the question is, okay, so my passport is going to expire. What the hell am I going to do? Yeah. And I cannot go renew it because I have to go back home for that, and I'm going to be arrested. So the amount of people that I've heard talk about that in the past years, insane.
Yeah. It's a privilege to have a passport that also gets you to a lot of places, and even to have a passport is a really big privilege. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, I think it's interesting having met a lot of international like students, people that come here to either work or study, like many of my wonderful podcast crew. Having to navigate I study here in the Netherlands and it's hard to find a job, and then I'm going to lose my visa. I don't want to bring up anything here.
Guys, the way my heart just like.
But you realize that as someone with a
Yeah.
Dutch nationality, you don't really have that at all. So it's
No, but I've definitely also seen friends, really stress about this and really having so much anxiety. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how like a paper has so much impact, right?
Can
on
define
just
so
your
much.
whole life, everything attached to your life.
and I feel like it's become more of a thing over the recent years. Like I feel like maybe like 5 years or so, or 10 years even, nobody was really talking about this. But would it be? Do you see this in your work as well? Do you notice these shifts? What are like the main youth topics that are happening currently in the Netherlands?
Main youth topics, I would say, are not really regarded to statelessness within the youth in the Netherlands, because they are here in the Netherlands. And they're Dutch.
Bit niche.
But money worries is a really big topic, because maybe it's also good to explain how we come to sort of sense what the topics are that the youth is really...
How do you pick those?
yeah, that's maybe good. So we have our surveys, so we do our researches, and these are national surveys. And at the end of the questionnaire, there's always a question: what topic would you like to sort of set on the agenda for the next research? And that's how we find out like what the topics are that really are sort of pressing at the moment for the youth in the Netherlands. So we had a research on money worries, performance pressure, housing crisis, children's rights, public transport. So those were the main topics for the last 2 years, I would say. So that's how we find out what the topics are that the youth find the most interesting to give their opinion on. And now we have the research on climate change. Yeah.
And how do you like gather these people that you send these questionnaires to? Can people just sign up, or is it?
Yes.
You find out who is young. And then you send-
LinkedIn search.
ID verification.
Yeah.
So we have a strategy to get to the youth. So one is our online strategy. So we do it via social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and there we just ask like, do you want to give your opinion on these topics? And also through partners, because we really believe in working together, so collaborating on the topics, because we are sort of the experts in youth participation, but we're not the experts in every team that we address. So that's how we sort of find our partners and then collaborate with them and also get their sort of youth involved. And we have our offline strategy. So that's where I also mostly work on. Janne did it before, but now it's my task. And I go through the whole country actually really to sort of go and talk to students from every kind of sort of educational background, and then also get their opinion. And then besides that, these are more sort of the momentarily sort of ask that we get, but we also have a panel, so then the youth can sign up to sort of get involved on 4 times a year sort of basis to really let their voices be heard. Yeah.
And maybe just quickly, as Liv mentioned, we have the online and the offline strategy. And of course, online, you can reach many youth, right? You can reach a broad audience. You can reach many people. But we also think it's really important to be representative and inclusive. So also reaching youth everywhere and all types of youth. So that's specifically why we go to certain places in the Netherlands, such as Groningen or Friesland, because, you need to have those conversations so that they also feel involved with these organizations, with these topics, that they also feel like they are included, or talking to people with different education backgrounds. So that's, I think that's mainly what our offline strategy is focused on, to really be as inclusive and diverse as well, and making sure that we hear all of those voices.
Of course. So, okay. So you collect the voices, you collect opinions for the topics that you want to focus on, you want to research, right? What happens next? You do the research, and then there are like also projects you're running, right? So how does this whole process work from, okay, we gathered the opinions, we gathered kind of the topics, so what's next?
Should I go? Yeah, of course. Once we have selected a topic that we want to discuss, then we organize a focus group, first of all, to gather the input of the young people on this topic. And we do desk research because, like Liv said, we are not the experts on all of these topics, right? So we need to familiarize ourselves and make sure that we fully understand what it's about, even though we are also young. We don't know everything, and we want to hear those voices. Then we also already at that beginning stage talk to those partners that are the experts, because we really believe that that is also a way to make sure that they can take the research to the next step. So now for climate, for example, we're already talking to those partners that can use our research and that can use it to make an impact, to take it further, to use it in different ways depending on what the solutions of the youth are and what they propose, basically.
So you provide research to other parties that are more specialized on the topic.
Yeah, exactly.
So that they have good information.
Yeah,
exactly.
Straight from the source.
Straight from the source.
And of course, we also reach out to politicians, we reach out to parliament members, etc. But we really believe that there's different levels where you can make an impact. So at the national political level, at the the civil society level, also at schools, for example, when it's about performance pressure. A big part of that is unfortunately the education system. So then you work together with schools or organizations that work with schools. So there's not one, it's not only the national political level that can make an impact. There's so many layers, right?
Yeah.
So
also municipalities, for example.
Also,
So we always try to figure out what the input of the youth is and what the solutions indeed are, as Jan also explained. Yeah. And then we try to make up our strategy, who are we going to sort of connect with and get the results to.
And is this how State of Youth works in all countries it operates in? I guess we're now talking a bit from the Dutch context, but in general, that's how it works. You find people to ask about these topics and gather information, and then hope to give that to experts and other organizations to be able to actually implement stuff to make change. Is that kind of...
Well, State of Youth internationally works a bit different. So they mostly focus on the youth initiatives, so the chapters. So they really support the chapters all over the world. And then they have thematic calls, but these are more sort of related to the work that the youth initiatives are doing. So I don't know if in the past that they have done researches.
They have.
So maybe you can dive into that a bit more.
Yeah.
Because you focus more on research here than maybe in other countries.
Yeah. So here we have the divide and sort of between research and supporting the youth initiatives, and the international program mostly focused on the youth initiative. So that's the difference because of the Dutch context and the international context.
So in the global context, there have been some researches, I think maybe 10 or something. There have been a few. But the challenge was to find those topics. First of all, what are the topics that you globally care about, right? And then even once you have chosen a topic, for example, climate change, let's say, how do you make a survey? How do you make a research that is fitting and that's appropriate to the context of youth all over the world? That's super complicated. Or if it's about gender equality, we also did research on that. How do you make that appropriate, fitting, interesting for youth all over the world? That was just really a challenge. And also, how do you make it representative and inclusive? And how do you make that really having a proper methodology for your research that you can really say, this is what the youth all over the world. That's not easy. So in a national context, that's a bit easier because it's easier to reach those youth. It's easier to have that context. But we are thinking about and considering if we can do that global research again. It's also really expensive if you want to do it in a really proper way. So that's the fundraising challenge. But I would also say on the thematic level and the content level, it's more difficult to do it on a global level, but we did try.
Is it funded by the European Union or by donations? How does that work? Is it?
Not by the European Union, not yet, at least. We have quite some individual donors, so just individual people who like our mission, who like our work, who are also really loyal. So we're really grateful to them for having supported us for the past 20 years. And then we have some institutional donors, for example, the Ministry of Education in the Netherlands, and some just funds, foundations that support us. But yeah, it's always a fundraising challenge.
I mean, it sounds really important work, right?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's the next step. You can say that you want to do something about something, but yeah, how do you operationalize that and actually, you know, go out there and figure it out and then gather real insights?
Yeah, I fear we hear that a lot when there is like some sort of like nice initiative. The biggest challenge is how to fund that initiative.
I think it's really good to have a broad spectrum of partners so that you're not fully dependent on one. And then if one falls out, you know, you lose basically your stability. So it's good to like spread it out a bit and also try to focus on the long-term partnerships, because in this day and age, unfortunately, there's a lot of like short-term projects, which of course, especially with our like long-term impact goals, that's quite a challenge if you then only have like short-term projects, because you want to work towards the next 5 years or 10 years. Yeah.
And so you were saying that you're working on climate change currently. Is that an ongoing research, or have you already done the research? Are there any results that you can already kind of share?
Unfortunately, the results are not in yet because the fieldwork is open now. So we're also going through the country already to gather the voices of the youth and also online. So at the moment, it's active. So you can still fill it in if you'd like.
If there's Dutch-speaking people listening, they can go to our website, fill in the survey.
Is it only Dutch then? Like,
this is only
you don't.
Dutch.
Do you exclude people that are not Dutch from these surveys, or is that a specific choice?
If you are living in the Netherlands and you have a Dutch passport, I would say then your voice can be heard. Also, if you don't speak Dutch, because that's also what we encounter, people who
are Dutch,
who don't have the first language as Dutch, for example. So we do try to keep so it's not in English yet, unfortunately, but we do try to keep it at B1 level, so the language that we use, so that it's comprehensible for the largest audience, I would say.
The surveys themselves.
Yeah.
As in how complex the wording is and stuff. Important, huh?
Yeah.
Because
So it's not about the nationality, like if you live here, but it's more just about like the practicalities of having to translate. That makes it
Getting the
complicated. So
answers
it's just
and then sharing it with the partners as well. That makes sense.
well, I mean, I guess from what I remember from like my courses on constructing questionnaires for like social analysis, is that two different languages can have very different you can translate something, but the interpretation can be very different.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
Yeah, it's the same question in Dutch versus English. So.
Yeah. Okay, so we don't have yet answers for climate change research. Should we pick a topic that you have? We're just curious.
I'm curious. What's the topic that you've encountered? I mean, Janne, you've worked here for how many? 2 years. Maybe you've seen a couple researchers come by.
It all.
Like, what's the one that you were most interested by, or the one
most
that
surprised
you more
by?
surprised?
I mean, obviously, as a young person, everything's interesting because I can like recognize almost everything, from lived experience. But I would say the one on housing and the one on financial stress were very interesting for me. Also because of the connection between the two, right? So there's connections that you can make because of the housing crisis, because of the really high rent. That's the reason why people are in financial stress, or they feel anxiety or stress because they feel like they can never buy a house. So it did surprise me in a way that this is such a big issue for so many young people in the Netherlands. Of course, I knew that it was an issue and I knew that it was a thing. But the fact that it was so big and so many people are going through this did surprise me in a way. And also, I guess it's a bit comforting to know that, like, okay, you're not alone. This is a thing. It's not a me problem. It's an us problem. And I think what's also really valuable in those conversations is talking about it, because those are topics, well, maybe the housing crisis a little bit less, but like financial stress, it can be a bit of a taboo topic that people don't really like to talk about money, or like money stress, money issues. So I think that was really valuable that people were so open and vulnerable and wanting to share their stories.
Maybe it's just an observation that's based on completely nothing. But like I feel like
I'm sure it's not.
I feel like people younger than myself, then at least it's become more of a thing where it's like I don't want to show if I'm financially struggling at all. In fact, I would like to amplify the look of, wealth and like materialism and stuff like that.
But I think the materialism also is a way of hiding the reality in a way, because I feel like people like to then buy certain things or go on a certain vacation to kind of have that as a status symbol, or to be like, no, I'm doing great,
Even
that's not the reality.
For money.
Exactly. So then it's a way to keep up the appearance, actually.
And it's also with like peer pressure. That's something which was also a result from our research, is that, for example, if you're going on a holiday with your friends and they're suggesting like, quite big expenses for this holiday, it's really hard to say like, I'm sorry, I just don't have the budget right now. So these sort of peer pressure kind of influences also cause these kind of things that you want to look good, or pretend as if there's nothing really going on in those terms. So that's something we also picked up quite a lot.
Actually reading about this the other day. So recession indicators, right? So when women start buying expensive shoes or expensive like lipsticks, now actually Apple just released this new MacBook. I don't know if you saw that, like a cheaper version of the MacBook. That's actually sort of a recession indicator, because if people feel like they are at least able to buy this lipstick or this MacBook, it makes them feel better about themselves when they cannot buy a house, So then it feels like materialism, but it's actually kind of hiding something worse.
Yeah, it's like a status symbol, but like even with MacBooks, it's like I feel like, at least in my perception, it's like it is a status symbol. Like you kind of like, oh, I have a MacBook, but then they keep making like, they make, for example, even with iPhones, right? They make like a regular one, they make like a cheaper version, like whatever they call it, I don't know. You still have an iPhone. It's still a status symbol, but then it's cheaper, and then you kind of like, I still have an iPhone. Let me show off.
I mean, I wonder how much social media contributes to this.
Oh, a lot, definitely.
I think we know the answer. Yeah. I don't know, is that anything, is it something that comes by in your research as well?
Yeah,
social
definitely.
Media?
Yeah, both in the performance pressure research, there were quite some youth who said like that social media impacted them, and also the way that people were sharing about their grades. Quite some children mentioned this specifically, like, oh, people are sharing their grades on WhatsApp, but also on Instagram or on Snapchat, so then it makes me feel worse about my grades. But yeah, the same for the other topics, like social media is also, again, a way of the appearances and like this perfect picture, right? Yeah, that was definitely the outcome of those researches as well.
Yeah, they have a big influencers as well. It's named sometimes as like they influence the youth as well in what they do. So those are all listed within the researches many times.
I have like an unrelated, like related to social media. I was reading a research the other day about running influencers.
The run clubs.
The cults. That I'm unfortunately part of.
You have been influenced.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Or are you influencing?
Yeah.
Oh, sometimes.
When the influence becomes the influencer.
And I was reading some research, and so there's been this like huge boom in social media and like all over the world with running, right? In the past few years, it like became such a huge thing. Everyone, like every second person is running these days and doing like run clubs. And in the past year, I think there was also an increase in injuries among runners. I think it was like US-based research or something. It's just like the amount of times that people who run came to doctors with like some sort of running related injuries from like stress fractures has just like drastically increased. And I think the conclusion of research was because people were seeing those influencers run like, I don't know, 50 kilometers a week every week when it's their only job. They thought that like, okay, I do have a full-time job, but I can still do the same thing. So they overtrain, seeing like these people overtrain, like training constantly, and end up having so many injuries because of it, just because this whole peer pressure, social media influence, all of that just came crashing down. And like you said, start feeling kind of bad about yourself if you don't do it, because all of them around me are doing it. But thing is, here we're talking about like social consequences, like how you feel, but there it's also like physical consequences by getting injured. That's what a huge impact the social media has been having on, like, also I feel on myself, to be honest. Like I scroll sometimes and I'm like, I don't want to see this anymore.
It just shows, like, I think how little you know of the other people, right? Like about their context. You don't know their full story and the context that they are in. I feel like it's a bit the same for those more like traditional momfluencers, you know? Like, yeah, they can cook and clean and bake and do all of these things because they either have like some other income stream or they have a husband providing the financial side. But then it makes women who are working feel like worse about themselves, right? Like, oh, why am I not doing all of this? But you don't know the full context, you don't know the full story, and why that is realistic for them, but not realistic for other people.
Yeah, it's just the one perfect picture that you see on social media, which you should be like, and also the youth should be aware of, you know, that this is how it works. Yeah.
So you collected you did research on, like, for example, financial pressures, right? So you collected all the answers. Where did it go next?
So one thing that we did is collaborate with those partners that are working on these topics. So one of them is focused on housing for youth specifically. So they have, I think, quarterly conversations with the Minister for Housing. So they have taken that research and used it in those conversations. Of course, the housing crisis is not solved yet, but they have taken it further and taken it to these conversations because also those partners say, like, it's so good to have this data to back up these specific things. Other things, there has been parliamentary questions. So like a way of like putting this issue on the agenda. So parliament members saying like, hey, this research happened. What are we going to do about it? It's to, for example, the state secretary. And then they kind of have to formulate a tricky answer to that question.
Answer with a question.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing,
Yeah, and other partners also, we have Diversion, for example, that sort of educates the youth. They have their own program also specifically on money worries. And then they have incorporated our findings also in the materials for the sort of lessons that they give to the youth. So that's how we sort of try to get the results at different places as well. Yeah,
that's true. For them, like, they go to schools and they give guest lessons. So that's also a way to like kind of break that taboo, right? To make young people just talk about it and have those conversations, and also talk about practical tips and like what you can do. So they've also taken a research into their program, and then the young people also see, hey, this is not only about me or my class, but this is about like youth in the whole Netherlands, like so many youth that are participating in this.
And that's also something that we provide as well. Always at the end of our researches, we also have like a sort of toolkit with tips, like, you know, who you can reach out to if you are experiencing financial stress or all kinds of tips, so that the youth can also sort of dive into that themselves.
Publicly available. As in, someone would be listening and they would I'm actually very curious about what is being said on this or what has been found on this, then they can just download this off your website or
all the reports are on our website, and then you can just, it's a PDF, and then you can just go through it, and then on one of the last pages the toolkit is there.
And so maybe this is a bit technical, but you do surveys. Do you also do like conversations, like more qualitative research in addition to quantitative research?
We always have our sort of research process is desk research. Then we have focus groups. So then we invite you to sort of test, like, are we heading in the right direction concerning this topic? Is it understandable? All these kind of things. So that's a part of our sort of research. And then we have the surveys, and that's then
combined into one finding.
Yeah, definitely.
The data itself from the surveys is quantitative data because, you know, it's thousands of young people from the whole country. But we also like to ask some open questions so that they can really just type in and share whatever they want to share. And those quotes really are
not from ChatGPT.
No.
You know what? That's already a win. I feel like these days
they have to come up with it themselves because they're in the survey.
No, but a lot of
Yeah.
times when you read these open questions, sometimes it's also a bit like heartbreaking, especially concerning topics like performance pressure or financial stress. So sometimes I like read them and I'm like, Janne, this is too, you know. So, but then,
But it's such a great addition to like the data and the percentages that you really get like the feeling and how people really feel about it and their emotions and their thoughts. So I think that's a really good combination if you're asking about quantitative and qualitative to combine those together.
Yeah, for sure. Because the quotes, I don't know, are you allowed to disclose any of those quotes? But like, was there something that kind of like...
Also from the top of my head, I wouldn't know them by heart as well, but you can find them in the researches. So we implement them also in the researches. So we have a few pages that also like bring the research alive, right? Because then you really see what the youth is saying about these topics themselves, and we keep them as they are. It's really like quotes. So so that's where you can find them.
I don't know like the specific quotes,
No,
but like some general sentiments definitely stuck with me from the financial stress. I remember quite a lot of youth just saying like, I was at the Albert Heijn and I was figuring out my groceries and I had to like check my bank accounts if I could pay or what I could do. Like that type of thing that's like so real and that's so like your daily life. Also people talking about like wanting to start a family, wanting to have kids, like your future, your life, and like stressing about that, like if it's not really realistic to do that. When it's about mental pressure and performance pressure, people talking about their parents and what their parents are saying to them, and that their parents are also giving them this pressure. Like what you said, it's kind of heartbreaking, but it's like so good to read and that they can at least share their story. Yeah. So those things specifically, I think, really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's an amazing platform to just give a voice to people who like maybe never thought they're gonna be heard, and just to bring it out there. It's amazing.
Yeah, is there anything like, because I presume you go into a research with a certain idea of what the findings might be. You have to be objective, obviously. Is there anything that came out of any of these researches that you were like, I did not expect this, or like maybe you thought something was happening, but it actually was not really a topic?
I think so. What surprises me the most, I think so, from the researches that I have done thus far, is actually the practical tips that the youth gives. For example, with performance pressure, it was a tip was like, please don't schedule an exam week after a holiday. And I was like, of course, because then you're going to be ending up studying in your holiday. Well, that is the time where you should relax. And I was like, this is such a great tip, in that would have helped me as well in the past. So those kind of outcomes really do surprise me. And also I think so with the housing, the research on housing, there were a lot of creative sort of solutions, like use buildings that are, like offices or spaces that are not really used to make housing there for students, for example.
I think that's also one of the strengths of like children and young people. They think more outside of the box. They think more creatively. They're more still like open to different ideas, when like politicians or like
tunnel
policymakers, they're like kind of narrow-minded, right, from their experience.
Yeah, and then these solutions are very sort of practical. You can really just put them into use, and then there's already sort of a bit of breathing air for the youth in these topics, sort of.
I remember one other thing that did surprise me in a way, because sometimes people say that like the young people are blaming all these other people for everything, right? And that the young people don't really take accountability for themselves, that type of thing. We see it's actually not like that. We see quite a different perspective from the young people, especially in our performance pressure survey. We ask like, who do you think influences your mental health and performance pressure the most? And the largest part, I think 68% or 70% said like, me, I'm responsible for my own mental health and performance pressure. I'm like, on the one hand, it's understandable, right? Like, it's about your brain, your mental health, of course, but it's also so important to show the children and the young people that you are part of this bigger system. You are part of this society that puts this pressure on you, whether it's your parents, whether it's the education system or just general capitalism. It's not like you as an individual. So that was an outcome that did surprise me in a way, that they really looked to themselves that much.
And that the pressure that is societal, I would say, that they really internalize it, you know, that they really think, oh, this is me. And then that's not really the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, has the pool to compete, like the feeling of that you have to compete with a lot more people than you used to, grown, do you think, at all? Because I'm just, this came out of a thought off my head that, like, you know, you used to send a letter if you want to apply for a job, and then there were like 10 other people, right? And I was reading something, I don't know, it was maybe like last year or something like that, but now you have like all the LinkedIn easy applies and stuff like that, and it's like 1,000 people are all competing for the same place, and therefore like you used to maybe compete with 1 or 2 other people, and now you kind of feel like you're competing with hundreds, and therefore you put a lot of pressure on yourself because you have to be excellent.
You have to be better than everyone else.
Yeah, better than more people than you used to be better.
I think it's also what we've talked about before, but social media is also a large part in this, as also LinkedIn, you know, but also Instagram. It just shows sort of the positive sides, or on LinkedIn you just show like what you're doing. You're just showing your successes and not...
LinkedIn is my personal hellhole. I can't deal with it. I'm so excited to announce. God,
thrilled to share.
And then when I was looking for a job, and then like every second person on my LinkedIn was like, I'm so thrilled to announce that I recently joined this company and this position, and it was so beautiful, and I'm so grateful. And I'm like, like, sure,
yeah. It's not very transparent, or it doesn't show the failures, which are also necessary in life. I believe in, you know, you have to also fall back sometimes to get up again, but the competition is also stronger. You also see it in just how difficult it is to get a job for the youth these days. So I think there is more competition. Also depends on what field you want to work in, but
that's what I was thinking. This is really like a personal account feeling, but there has been such a focus, I think, in the Netherlands, but also more broadly, on like getting this high education, going to university, getting these diplomas, So then you have a lot of high educated people who are all struggling to find the same jobs. And then there's like shortages of personnel in all of these other jobs, because we have been so focused on like getting people to do this, when actually, you know, if you're talking about making an impact and like being of value to society, we also need all of those other jobs and all of those other people. So I think there is a bit of a shift going on there, where there's also a lot more stimulation of like different types of studies, more practical studies, because we also really need to value those people. But I think that's also part of like how we feel that the job market is so competitive right now, is because we've all been pushed to like go for this higher education and go for these specific jobs and fields of work.
Yeah, I think it's always an evolving thing. I was listening to a podcast about that
that's
the other week.
A perfect segue.
But it was one of the things that they were talking about as well is like the fact that a couple of years ago we had a lot of like we need a lot of teachers. We don't have enough teachers, and then a lot of money was pushed against getting people to become teachers, and now we have enough teachers, but now anyone else who wants to become a teacher, it becomes way more competitive. And I think also, you know, we need knowledge workers, and now we all of a sudden have AI, and then it probably will in the long run change itself, I think.
Probably like as it happens, I feel like every few years, like there's like, for example, AI came out, and like the first year was like this huge like panic also among people, like, oh my god, AI is going to take all of the jobs. Then it settled down, then it like goes up again with like little panic, little concerns, and it all dies down. I think it's going to balance out.
Well, I think it's interesting, because what I want to ask is this. We were talking about this specific research that you did then, but like, of course, State of Youth has existed, I think, for how many years now?
Internationally since 2019.
And okay, that's relatively recent, actually. I'm surprised.
Really? Oh, funny.
Because I'm actually kind of curious, like these patterns, these things like financial stress and housing, like somehow to me it doesn't feel like these are things that never existed. I feel like previous generations probably had similar stuff. Maybe it was slightly different.
Maybe not in such a urgent kind of pushing
Well,
manner.
I'm kind of curious because I think that, like, you know, every generation has their topic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, for us, it's housing and the rise of AI and unhealthy stress to perform. But like, we only have a limited time to solve this, because then, I'm sure that we need to kind of figure out how we're going to solve this. Do you see anything like happening currently, like that you're like, okay, we noticed this, and I'm actually seeing that organizations are taking action to combat this, and you maybe have like some examples or something that you see?
I think also, just to touch upon it quickly, that sort of the multiple topics that like create a sort of crisis or for the youth now, that is something that is the topic of the youth nowadays, I would say, because it's so easy to get all the information from everything, everywhere, sort of what is happening in the world, and that sort of puts a lot of pressure also on the youth. And one of our chapters, Finn, he's called, he has a beautiful initiative called Bluey Film, and they also try to sort of get all these topics together in short films about climate change, and they try to sort of identify what all these different topics are for the youth as well, in regards to climate change always, but to sort of show also the difficulties of all these combined topics that face the youth nowadays. So
and how they all connect with each other. Yeah.
Because they do. Yeah. That's something that we really see as well. But that was not an answer to your question.
No,
but sort of, I had to think about it. Yeah.
And your question was like what we see happening, like in terms of progress, right?
Exactly.
I do feel like there has been more interest in youth participation, the voices of youth and children and young people in general in the past years. I feel like that has really been improving thanks to all of the efforts of all of these organizations and children and young people, right? So I do feel like there is a bit of a shift going on there, that we are taken more and more seriously, and that it's becoming harder and harder to just make policies, make decisions without involving us. So I do see a bit of a positive movement going on there.
Thank God.
Yeah, because it's a large group.
I mean,
it's a large group, right?
Yeah.
Of the population, I think.
Yeah, and also there used to be a minister of youth way before, like, but it was under VWS, I think. I'm not sure, but it was under like a bigger ministry. And now with the new cabinet, there is a minister of youth coming. So that is also a promising thing. Like we didn't speak to her yet, and we would love to speak to her and also really get
open invitation.
Yeah, open invitation.
Email us.
Yeah. For to really embed youth participation within also decision making, you know, on that political level. So
I think organizations like this are like a very powerful tool because you've been doing it for quite some time, and you already have all this data, you already have all this knowledge, and it's amazing that they can just kind of involve you and already get kind of a head start instead of starting from scratch.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
That's a strategy.
Well, I think informed decisions start with quality. Of course. Insights, right? I mean,
and that's why, thankfully, all the politicians and state secretaries, the people, they are open to our research and they are interested in it. You know, having to make decisions based on it is a different question, of course. We're getting there, but they do really welcome it. So that's a positive sign.
Yeah, I'm guessing like the future, like youth does define the future anyway. So I think it's in their best interest to make sure that this youth is not like mentally struggling every single day because they cannot pay for their groceries.
Yeah.
And if you look at like turnout in elections and young people not really voting as much, that's a big concern, right? If young people are just like completely detaching themselves from politics, who's going to run the country? Who's going to be doing all of this? And like you are making these policies and decisions for your own future, right? Of your country. So you need to involve the future of your country as well.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a topic that has been there throughout history, but sometimes you feel like it doesn't really matter anymore. If you look at the state of the world, I don't want to leave on a hopeless note, but it's like you become a bit apathetic towards what's going on because you feel like you have no say.
Yeah, and that's something that we as State of Youth really want to change. We want to make youth really feel like they have a power in, you know, making sort of shaping their own future, to really act and also let their voices be heard. So that's something we try to sort of change, that hopeless feeling.
And I think also really when you look at all of those chapters that are doing all of these amazing things all over the world, and they're just making small impact on a local level, right? But it's so amazing to see, and that gives so much hope. And the same goes for the winners of the International Children's Peace Prize every year. Like, these children are truly incredible. Last year, Bana Alabet won the prize, a girl from Syria. I mean, she was like really young already. She was giving her opinions and voicing and giving a voice to all of those children who are in war zones, for example. The year before, it was Nila Ibrahimi. I think she might be somewhere here.
We have it here. Yeah. We can show it for the video, but we are holding up a poster.
She's from Afghanistan, and she raises her voice for the women and girls of Afghanistan. So I think those examples of children who are making such an impact and who are doing such amazing things, and if they're not losing hope, we are definitely not allowed to lose hope. Like, if they're doing all of this, we better
I was just about to say, this is giving me hope. Like, I feel like also every time, we're talking about kind of like a bit of a negative side of social media, of this pressure, but I also see like a lot of positives, because I do encounter quite some content about like this type of initiatives where people speak up, where people share their opinions, where people try to make a change, and that inspires me. And I'm like, what am I doing sitting on my couch doing absolutely nothing, losing hope, being like, oh, this world is doomed? Like these people make change. Like, I want to as well.
Nila is an example of that, because the Taliban basically enforced a rule that women and girls are not allowed to sing, basically, or raise their voice. And what she did together with her brother was make a protest song and record that protest song and post it on social media, and she went completely viral, completely crazy. So then you really see that social media can have a really positive impact as well, and you can reach people, you can make sure people hear you and see you, and this is a way for us to know what is going on all over the world, right? Otherwise we wouldn't have access to the information.
And also, like, we have the extraordinary cases, but also if you just want to sort of participate, that's also something you could do with State of Youth. So you don't need to have the idea yourself. You can also just become a member of a chapter, for example, and then you can also get off the couch and become active. So
because wrapping things up, I think a little bit, I think the research you're doing is very important and necessary, and it apparently passes by the desks of people that can actually make a decision.
Which is incredible.
But unfortunately, maybe I am not considered youth anymore. I don't know.
You are still a few months.
But I've never come in contact with this at all, and I'm sure that there's people out there that are listening, maybe that are like, well, I would like to somehow maybe not make a protest song in a country where you can be prosecuted, but do something smaller. How would you say is their best way to start tomorrow to get involved?
Start today.
Start today.
Yeah. I would agree. Just start today, and small acts can make a real big change as well. So we have if you go to our site, we also have the movement platform, and then you can become a chapter leader or a chapter member, and then you can just get involved with small things already. It can be like picking up plastic from the street, for example, but it could also be bigger. Just take on action to really feel that within yourself that you have the power to make a change in that sense. Yeah.
And I would also say that you don't need to have everything figured out yet. Yeah. If you just have ideas, if you want to make a start, we are here to help you develop those plans and those ideas, because we have some experience. We see what other people are doing. We've kind of seen what works, what maybe works a bit less, what can make your life easier and harder. So you don't need to have it all figured out. You're not alone in this. We are here to help. Yeah. But it's about starting. Yeah.
I think what you said at the beginning, it's about collaboration as well. There's a lot of organizations out there that are available.
That are there to help, to provide the resources, and just basically give you anything you need to make a change, I guess.
You're not by yourself. No, there are other people to support you, in these kind of things. So
yeah, I think honestly that's the most beautiful takeaway from this conversation. You're not alone. You can have people there who support you.
I think it's nice to hear that there's quality research being done, and there's ways to get involved with that, and that's the only way we can move forward at the end of the day, right?
Together.
Together.
We are in this together.
Let's. I love that. I think we are going to round it off here. Lisa, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. It was State of Youth, Liv and Janne. My co-host Stefan, and my name's Lisa. It was your and my Mom Series podcast, Popping Bubbles. Thank you so much for listening, watching, follow, like, share, join State of Youth to make the change today. And thank you so much for your time.
And see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.
Okay, bye.
That was beautiful.
That was nice.
I loved it.
What did you guys think?
Yeah, super nice conversation. Yeah, really nice to talk to you guys.
How long? I saw the 5 minutes. I was like, I'm not done yet. But